You ever had a neighbor so entitled, so utterly unreasonable, that you started questioning your own sanity? Well, let me tell you what happened when one moved in next door to my ranch, and how she tried to shut me down just because, get this, she didn't like the smell of nature. If you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare or someone who thinks the world should revolve around them, this story's for you. Stick around. You're not going to want to miss how I turned her complaint into the biggest regret of her life. And hey, if you enjoy a good revenge served farm fresh, don't forget to like and subscribe. This is just getting started. It started 3 months ago when Lorraine moved into the gray stucco house that sat on the edge of my property line. She drove a spotless white crossover, wore high heels to pick up her mail, and gave the kind of wave that's more of a warning than a greeting. From the moment she arrived, I knew we were in for a ride. My ranch isn't big, just 10 acres of land with a few horses, some goats, and my old dog Tank who guards the feed shed like it's Fort Knox. It's been in my family since my grandfather broke ground on it in 1968, and I've kept it running with a lot of sweat and no small amount of pride. We follow every local ordinance, pay our dues to the HOA, even though we're technically grandfathered out of most restrictions, and we keep to ourselves. That is, until Lorraine decided the smell of hay and manure didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. The first complaint came 2 weeks after she moved in. I found a neatly folded note pinned to my gate. The scent from your property is invading mine. Please resolve this within 48 hours or I will report it. No greeting, no name, just a demand written in floral stationery and taped like a parking ticket. I chuckled at the audacity, showed it to Tank, and tossed it in the trash. I figured she'd get used to it. Most people do. I was wrong. A few days later, she showed up at the fence line in a pair of designer sunglasses and a pastel visor, arms crossed, eyes squinting like she was staring into the sun. This is a residential area, she announced like I wasn't standing on land that predated her HOA by 30 years. You shouldn't have livestock this close to family homes. I was calm. I explained that the ranch was zoned agricultural, that my permits were in order, and that frankly her property value was probably higher because of the open space. She didn't like that. I'll be speaking to the board, she snapped, turning on her heel, like she expected the grass itself to move out of her way. That was just the beginning. The following week, the HOA president, a tired man named Dennis with an expression permanently stuck between "I don't care" and "please don't involve me," knocked on my door. Hey, listen, he mumbled, not meeting my eye. There's been a complaint about animal odor and noise and, visual clutter. I laughed out loud. Visual clutter? Yeah, he said. She says your barn offends her sense of balance. I looked at him deadpan. It's a barn, Dennis. He shrugged. I told her you're outside of the new code zones, but she's persistent. Persistent was putting it mildly. Over the next 2 weeks, Lorraine launched a campaign that would have made a lobbyist proud. She filed anonymous complaints with the county, called animal control 3 times, who after checking and finding nothing wrong, gave Tank a treat and left laughing. She even left flyers in the mailboxes claiming my ranch was a public health hazard. At first, I tried to stay patient. I offered to walk her through the ranch, explain the waste management process, show her the compost system, even introduced her to Betty, my calmest goat. Lorraine acted like I'd invited her to tour a landfill. I don't care if you use gold-plated wheelbarrows, she hissed. This place stinks, and I'm not going to live next to it. I started to understand. This wasn't about smell, or noise, or goats. This was about control. Lorraine didn't move into the neighborhood to become part of it. She moved in to rule it, and she had no idea who she was messing with. Lorraine escalated things faster than a prairie fire in high wind. One day I came back from picking up a feed order and found 2 county vehicles parked along my fence. A third, a white SUV with environmental inspection unit stenciled on the side, sat idling near my front gate. I didn't panic. Everything on my ranch was up to code, but the look on the inspector's face told me this wasn't a routine visit. Mr. Harlan? He asked, stepping out and flashing a badge like I was some kind of criminal. We received multiple complaints about improper animal waste disposal and a possible unlicensed livestock operation. I stared at him, then burst out laughing. Buddy, I've had this land since I was 12. I've got enough licenses to wallpaper the barn. He didn't laugh. We did the walkthrough. He checked the feed storage, inspected the manure bins, even tested the runoff drains. Everything was immaculate. I keep my ranch cleaner than most people keep their kitchens. As he packed up to leave, the guy sighed. Honestly, this is a waste of everyone's time. But the woman next door has filed 3 reports in the last 2 weeks. She's quoting health code subsections like she went to night school for it. She's not going to stop, I said. No, he agreed. She's not. But Lorraine didn't stop at officials. She moved on to intimidation. One afternoon, my ranch hand Carlos showed up late, visibly shaken. He just parked his truck near the gate when Lorraine stormed across the street, waving her phone like a weapon, screaming something about illegals and trespassing. She said she called ICE, he muttered. Said I didn't belong here. Carlos has been a U.S. citizen since 1998. His wife bakes cookies for the local sheriff's office every Christmas. But to Lorraine, he was just another tool to use. I told him to take the rest of the day off with pay. The next week, a delivery truck bringing in winter hay was stopped at the entrance. The driver said a woman had blocked the road with her car, claiming he was dumping hazardous waste without a permit. It took an hour to sort out, and by the time we unloaded, 3 bales were soaked from rain. That's when I stopped laughing. I attended the next HOA meeting in person, something I hadn't done in years. The usual suspects were there: retirees who complained about lawn heights, middle-aged couples with nothing better to do than bicker over mailbox colors, and Dennis trying not to sweat through his khakis. Lorraine sat at the front, legs crossed like a queen on her throne. She saw me walk in and smirked. I took the empty chair next to the refreshment table and waited. When the floor opened to community concerns, Lorraine sprang up like she'd rehearsed. I would like to formally request an investigation into the ranch at Lot 23. The odors are offensive, the noise is disruptive, and frankly, it's dragging down the value of our neighborhood. I have over 30 signed statements from concerned residents. She held up a binder like it was a holy book. I raised my hand. Dennis sighed. Go ahead, Mr. Harlan. 2 questions, I said calmly. First, how many of those 30 signatories actually live within smelling distance of my fence? Silence. Second, what exactly do you propose I do with my livestock? Teach them to poop politely? A few people chuckled. Lorraine turned beet red. You're being flippant, she hissed. This is serious. Our neighborhood deserves better. Dennis cleared his throat. As we've said previously, the ranch predates the HOA. It's outside zoning. We don't have jurisdiction. Then I'll go higher, she snapped. And I believed her. On my way out, an older woman I barely recognized leaned in and whispered, Don't let her push you out. This place was better when it smelled like horses. I nodded. That night, I sat on my porch, staring out at the dark field where my animals grazed in peace. Tank lay at my feet, ears twitching. Lorraine's porch light flicked on across the way, sensor-triggered and sharp. A shadow passed behind her blinds. I sipped my coffee and smiled. She wanted a fight. Fine. But if she thought she could bully me off my land, she had no idea what kind of storm she was calling down. I wasn't going to retaliate with pettiness or illegal tricks. No, I was going to use the one thing Karen types like Lorraine never expect: patience and a little bit of paperwork. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a friend of mine, Mark, who works in rural development and knows more about zoning loopholes than any HOA board ever will. The second was to my accountant. You serious about this? Mark asked, half laughing, as I laid out my idea. I've never been more serious, I replied. I want to know exactly what I'm allowed to do on my land and on the parcel adjacent to it. You thinking of expanding? Let's just say I'm thinking of making a statement. Mark got back to me in 2 days. The land just east of Lorraine's house, a long, narrow lot that used to be part of a failed vineyard project, was up for private sale. It had no structure on it, was zoned mixed-use agriculture, and sat outside the HOA's jurisdiction. Price was steep, but not outrageous. Lorraine didn't know it, but her fortress of complaint had a back door wide open. I drove out to the parcel with Tank riding shotgun. We walked the property line slowly, boots crunching dry grass, wind tugging at the loose fence wire. From the far corner, I could see Lorraine's back porch perfectly. White lawn chairs lined up like sentries. A dainty birdbath dead center. The irony made me smile. I called the owner that night and made a cash offer. He countered. I accepted. 10 days later, I had the keys. I didn't announce anything. Didn't post signs or bring in trucks. Not yet. I just let it sit there waiting. Meanwhile, Lorraine kept up her little war. She posted on the neighborhood app accusing me of harboring feral livestock. Someone forwarded me a screenshot where she called my goats dangerously unkempt. I kept screenshots. I kept records. But mostly, I kept quiet. Instead of reacting, I planned. I filed permits for mobile fencing and temporary livestock enclosures. The county cleared them in less than a week. The land had no permanent structures, but under state law, as long as animals had shelter and access to food and water, I could rotate them on the land without restriction. I also applied for a seasonal event license, something small ranchers use to host educational workshops or farmers markets. My application, Community Agricultural Awareness Days, a public invitation to local families to visit a working ranch. I even added a clause, free pony rides for children under 10, all by the book. I waited for spring. By late April, the first signs went up. Hand-painted eggs and goat yoga, Saturday's pony rides, local cheese, live demos open to public, family friendly. I put the biggest sign at the edge of Lorraine's side fence, facing her kitchen window. That's when the real fireworks started. The morning after the signs went up, Lorraine marched down my driveway like she was leading an angry mob, except she was alone, gripping a clipboard and wearing a blazer like she was heading to court. "You can't do this," she spat. I looked up from the water trough I was scrubbing. "Do what?" "That." She pointed so hard her arm trembled. "A petting zoo? Next to my house? Are you insane?" I dried my hands on my jeans and smiled. "Actually, it's not a petting zoo. It's an agricultural awareness initiative. Fully licensed, county approved." "I'll sue." "For what?" "Promoting local farming." She opened her mouth, closed it, then thrust the clipboard forward. "I've gathered signatures." I didn't take it. "HOA can't stop it, not their land." She stormed off, muttering something about environmental sabotage. 2 weeks later, I held the first Saturday event. My niece brought her Shetland pony, Peanut, and the kids loved him. We had fresh cheese samples, local honey, and yes, goat yoga. A group of retirees showed up just for that. A local reporter came and wrote a puff piece titled, "From Manure to Mindfulness." Lorraine watched from behind her curtains, her face a pale smear behind the glass. Tank laid on the porch and didn't blink once. But the best part, a local farm outreach coordinator asked if I'd consider hosting monthly events, said it was good for community engagement. "Let me think about it," I said, already drafting my next permit request. Lorraine wanted a reason to complain? I was just getting started. By the end of spring, my ranch wasn't just a peaceful place to raise animals anymore. It had become a Saturday pilgrimage for half the town. Families came in droves, drawn by the free pony rides, fresh baked goods from a friend's farm stand, and the oddly soothing sight of goats balancing on yoga mats while a local instructor whispered mantras. Every weekend, my field next to Lorraine's house buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the occasional baa. The scent of hay mixed with barbecue smoke from the food truck I invited. Kids chased chickens, couples took selfies with Tank, and vendors lined the fence with jars of jam and woven baskets. It wasn't just legal, it was loved, and Lorraine was losing her mind. At first, she tried subtlety, complaints to the county, anonymous calls to the health department. She even claimed the goats were screaming at unnatural volumes. Each time, inspectors came and left with a smile and a bag of kettle corn. Nothing I was doing broke any code. When that didn't work, she escalated. She hired a lawyer. Dennis from the HOA called to give me a heads up. "She wants to file a nuisance claim," he said, voice low like we were planning a bank heist. Letter, I said. Every permit's clean. And technically, that land isn't even in the HOA. There was a pause. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I chuckled. Not as much as I'm about to. You see, while Lorraine was busy throwing tantrums over goat bleats and lemonade stands, I was laying the groundwork for phase two, permanent expansion. That's right, I wasn't just hosting events anymore. I was building a legally zoned, year-round microfarm experience. I'd already cleared the financing. I ordered modular animal shelters and storage units that met state agricultural guidelines. I filed paperwork to create a small nonprofit under the name Green Roots Education Initiative, focused on teaching kids about sustainable farming. With nonprofit status came more protections, more grants, and more ways to operate freely without HOA interference. Best part? The new structures were well within the setback line, just close enough to Lorraine's backyard to be visible from every one of her rear windows. Construction started in early June. The sound of power drills and the beeping of delivery trucks began echoing through Lorraine's walls at 7 a.m. sharp, 3 days a week. I was respectful but firm. My workers were polite, wore uniforms, and followed every rule in the book. Lorraine, meanwhile, called the sheriff 3 times in 1 week. Is it illegal to build an educational chicken coop? I asked when the deputy stopped by. He shook his head, grinning. You're within your rights. I offered him a fresh-baked cinnamon roll. He took 2. One day, while the crew was installing a small shaded arena for riding demos, Lorraine came storming out again. No blazer this time, just pajama pants, slippers, and a rage that cracked her voice. You've turned this into a circus. No, ma'am, I said, tipping my hat. It's a community hub. You should stop by sometime. Her face turned purple. That weekend, I hosted a Farmer for a Day workshop. Kids planted herbs in mason jars, petted lambs, and sat in a circle while my cousin taught them how to churn butter. A local councilwoman visited with her grandkids and posted about it on social media. The post went viral. Suddenly, I had 3 news outlets calling me for interviews. Lorraine posted a 900-word rant in the neighborhood group titled, "This is not what I paid for." She accused me of manipulating the system, of intentionally tormenting her, of weaponizing livestock. The comments were not on her side. People were tired of her. I wasn't. See, while she raged behind her windows and filed her letters and stomped on her porch in fury, I was smiling. Not out of spite, well, not entirely, but because I had turned the things she hated most into something my entire town now cherished. I didn't bend the rules. I mastered them. She came looking for a fight. I built a festival. And I wasn't done yet. Summer peaked with our biggest event yet. Harvest Fest on the Hill. Over 1,000 people showed up throughout the day. We had local bands on a small wooden stage, hay rides along the fence line, even a temporary petting enclosure with alpacas that a friend trailered in from his property 2 counties over. The entire setup ran less than 200 feet from Lorraine's back patio. She didn't leave her house once, but her blinds twitched so often you'd think they were motorized. By this point, Lorraine had become a running joke in the community. Vendors rolled their eyes when she walked past muttering about zoning violations. Kids dared each other to wave at her windows. People who'd never even met me sent messages of support. I was no longer just the guy with the ranch. I was the guy who stood his ground, and it all stayed perfectly, frustratingly legal. Every event was cleared. Every enclosure, temporary or not, followed the codes. Even the outdoor hand-washing station, installed to meet health department suggestions, was plumbed with a portable sink and filtered tank system. I gave the inspectors lemonade when they came. They left smiling. That's when I found out Lorraine had put her house up for sale. I saw the sign on a Monday morning, just after sunrise. A small white rectangle posted on a perfect green lawn with a blue logo that read, "Whisper Pines Realty." I laughed so loud Tank barked. A few days later, during a scheduled tour, I watched a young couple pull into her driveway. They barely lasted 5 minutes. As the agent was trying to show them the backyard, Tank let out a single deep bark. At the same time, one of our goats climbed onto a barrel and started bleating like he was giving a TED Talk. The couple left. 2 more visits that week ended with potential buyers either frowning through the fence or asking questions like, What's that smell? Lorraine removed the listing the following Monday. And then, she snapped, she waited until one of our weekday workshops had just wrapped up. A few families were still wandering around. Volunteers were collecting folding chairs. That's when Lorraine marched across the field, cell phone filming, screaming about code violations and lawsuits and psychological warfare. She tripped over a water hose. Flat on her back, feet in the air, phone skidding across the dirt like a puck on ice. Everyone turned. No one laughed. I walked over calmly, offered her my hand. She slapped it away. By the time sheriff deputies arrived, called by Lorraine herself, she was red-faced, dust-covered, and barely coherent. The deputy pulled me aside. "She says you're orchestrating a harassment campaign," he said, clearly embarrassed. "Sir," I replied, dead serious, "all I've done is host educational farm events for local families." He nodded slowly. "Honestly, that's what it looks like." That was the last straw for her. 3 days later, a moving truck backed into her driveway. No farewell, no flyers. Just boxes, a few muffled arguments, and a for sale sign once again staked into the lawn. This time with a bold red sticker that read, "Price reduced." The house stayed empty for a month. When the new owners moved in, a retired couple from Idaho with grandkids and a love for homegrown tomatoes, they brought over a lemon pie and asked if I needed help setting up the next goat yoga. I gave them the good folding chairs. And as I sat on my porch that evening, tanks stretched out at my feet, the sun setting behind the pasture, I watched the last of Lorraine's dust settle. The blinds didn't twitch. The windows stayed dark. She came in with entitlement. She left in silence. Me? I just kept farming. And maybe smiling, just a little wider than before.